hope I get some stone crabs out of this thing before it's all over with. Dolphins coming in, taking on the Ravens over the weekend, as well as the Terps and the Caps playing big games this week. I don't know that the Wizards are going to play any big games, and we don't talk a ton of NBA around here, but when we do, we call upon Steve Kyler from Basketball Insiders, powered up by One Up Sports at this point. You can always follow his journey out on Twitter, and tens of thousands do, at Steve Kyler NBA, and fighting from the sun down there in Florida, talking all things basketball. Steve, what's going on, man? How are you?
Well, tough news for the Memphis Grizzlies, losing Mike Conley to a fractured vertebrae. So I guess that'll be the dominating story here for the next few days.
Well, and look, I went out on a little NBA tour, and I'm not an NBA hater, far from it. I wish it were more engaging to me at this point in my life. And, for a week, I took this 6'6" German kid who saved my wife's life around the country going to NBA games. And, I got to tell you, Washington's not the only place where they have an energy problem in the building. My dear friend Peter DeLutis, who's my partner, my COO here at WNST, he loves the NBA, just absolutely loves it. He doesn't love going to Wizards games because he says it doesn't look and feel like an OKC game would or like a Warriors game would. So I'm out on the road on the West Coast. He was asking about the vibe in the arena. It really is amazing through the NBA how some places have it and some places don't have it. And I don't know if they're ever going to get it back, and it usually comes with winning, like it did in Cleveland and Golden State and other places, right?
Yeah, and I think sometimes, I think you're seeing this with the LA Lakers a little bit, is sometimes you'll get a fun, exciting team that's just fun to root for. There were a couple of years there, even when the Sacramento Kings were bad, that the building had vibe and energy. And I would almost liken it to football, Kansas City. It's always rowdy at Arrowhead, no matter who you're playing or how good the team is. There are a couple of franchises that are like that, but there's no question, especially when you start talking about, some of the really energy-filled buildings. Those are the ones that are, the real, winners in the NBA, if you will, especially the high-power teams. But look, even when Miami had the big three, that building didn't have much going for it. But no question that the vibe is very different from building to building. And again, it's very much so that home court advantage in the NBA is a real thing, because you can feel it, especially in those special cities.
Well, and look, I traveled around with the Dallas Mavericks, right? So I saw them play in L.A. against the Lakers. I saw them play in Golden State. I saw them play in New York. There was definitely energy at Madison Square Garden the night I was there. There was definitely tons of energy in Golden State the night I was there. That was the day after the election when Steve Kerr went crazy. We were at that press conference. But, by and large, winning is what it's about. And, I would have said this before the season began. We're at the quarter pole now. It's Golden State and Cleveland and kind of sort of everybody else. You put San Antonio in there or whatever, but when it really comes down to it, the Warriors are once again in the midst of laying down the law as to how good they could be, the perception of how good they can be, and obviously for all the guys who didn't win last year, a hell of a chip on their shoulder, not to mention Durant.
Yeah, it's a special group of guys, and I think the biggest part of it isn't so much that they have the guys, is they've got really unselfish guys. And when you look at the DNA of the team, not only are they fun to watch in terms of a style of basketball, but, they also have kind of those players. And even their bench players are exciting. Sean Livingston's a really good player. Zaza Pachulia's fun. He brings everything he has. They play a very interesting brand of basketball. Lakers are playing a lot like that, too. Here's the one thing I'll tell you is, as we've seen recently, injuries will catch everybody. And as much as we want to pencil the Golden State Warriors and the Cleveland Cavaliers as, the top two teams in their conferences, an injury here, an injury there can make that thing a lot closer than you want it to be. And
as we learned last year when Steph Curry went out, right?
Yeah, and I think that's where you start to have to look at some of these other teams and go, look, San Antonio is a serious contender this year. The LA Clippers are a serious contender this year, and if anybody stumbles along the way, that's where you get back into. And it's funny because, there's sometimes you don't want to watch basketball in November. November is ugly basketball, but some of these games in November are going to be the difference between whether or not you're the second seed or the third seed, or you're the eighth seed or the fifth seed. All of it is going to come down to one or two games in both of these conferences in terms of where you're at, and can you dodge that bullet of the Cavaliers and the Warriors early on. So there's a lot more going on in the season than just the two top teams. Two top teams are a lot of fun to watch. But I'll tell you, even in the Eastern Conference, Atlanta, Charlotte, these are some pretty good basketball teams that have surprised a lot of people in how well they've come out of the gate. They may not beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in a series or win as many games, but they're going to be right there in the hunt for the second chair in the Eastern Conference Final.
Well, and Toronto's in the second chair right now, and I don't know that anybody really takes them seriously against Cleveland, and they've been on a nice little run here this week as well, but they're the second best team, right? I mean, when it all washes out, they'll be the 2 seed, right?
They're close. I mean, like I said, you look at this Atlanta team and this Charlotte team, they're as good as anybody we're talking about, and that's surprising because, you look at the Atlanta Hawks, you say, okay, you lose a Jeff Teague and an Al Horford, and you replace them with Dennis Schroeder and Dwight Howard, and you're better. I mean, it's against conventional wisdom. And again, we haven't really seen what this Boston Celtics team is going to look like. They've been kind of dysfunctional and, they're in some games and they're in the hunt, but that was a team that was maybe supposed to win the Atlantic. So, as this season starts to play out, I think we'll see what's really real. But I think what we've seen so far through a good dozen games is there's a lot more going on in both conferences than maybe the top two teams we want to talk about. And look, I'm going to be the first person to tell you, I think the Warriors come out of the West. I think the Cavs come out of the East. But I don't think either one of them are going to get a walk there. I think they're going to have to fight their way to it. And then that's what's going to make the finals interesting is can you get out without having to go through 7-game series or losing anybody to injury, because the teams that are below you are going to play their heart out and bring everything they have.
Steve Kyler joining us here from Basketball Insiders as well as One Up Sports. You can follow their journey out there as well as at Steve Kyler. That's Kyler NBA out on Twitter. Yeah, you mentioned the LA Clippers. I sat in that building. That was the first of my 5 games in about 7 nights running through the NBA. And they just beat the Detroit Pistons so mercilessly early in the game. It was like one of the worst basketball games that I've ever seen. You talk about sort of the stalking horse and keeping the pace and whatnot. They're hanging in there despite they're not going to win 25 in a row or whatever. Golden State might, but they're kind of hanging in there, and they need to be considered, right?
Yeah, and this is the first time I think we've seen the LA Clippers completely healthy. And the other part is clicking. Normally there's always been kind of, hey, they're good friends off the court, but boy, they don't like each other on the court. And they seem to have gotten past that. Chris Paul is shooting the ball incredibly well. Blake Griffin's playing at an MVP level. DeAndre Jordan's hitting free throws. And as you said, they're blowing teams out. And that was not something we've seen this Clipper team do. And the other part, too, is I think that, they've got a lot of continuity. They're bringing back pretty much the same core of guys. They added a couple in Mo Spates, who was on the Warriors, and, and those types of kind of bench-level players. But a lot of their core, 8, 9 of those guys were there last year, so they're not having to reinvent everything. And, those early kind of stumbles that you've seen from the Golden State Warriors, you got to factor in, got a lot of new guys, for the first time in 20 years, the Spurs are playing without Tim Duncan. They got to figure that part out. And, the Clippers have got out to a hot start because, 1, they're healthy, and 2, they're playing together. And Doc Rivers has been telling us that this team was this good for about 2 years. I don't think anybody believed him. They're this good. So we'll see if they can stay healthy. That's been the Clippers' problem.
Oklahoma City, we thought it was all going to fall apart after Durant. I mean, certainly they're not going to win a title, but they're better than the average Bear, right? I mean, they might win the Northwest.
Yeah, I was a little curious to see what Oklahoma City was going to be. Their schedule was incredibly soft coming out, so I think they got out to like a 6-1 start, but 5 of those teams just aren't even remotely in the playoff discussion. But they've started to hit some teams that can really play, and what Russell Westbrook is doing is just amazing. Right now he's averaging a triple-double on the season. We haven't seen a player do that since Oscar Robertson. So he's bringing it all the way. And, the supporting cast is a little better than expected. Steven Adams has been really good. Victor Oladipo from Maryland, from the DMV, hometown kid's doing well in Oklahoma City, and they bring it. And, when you've got a guy like Russell Westbrook that can just change the game in so many different ways, he's just coming at you all the time. I'm wondering, is he going to have to let up at some point? But it doesn't seem like it. We're a good dozen games in, a couple of weeks in, and he's still coming. So I wonder if he can do it over an 82-game season. But, Oklahoma City, that's not going to be an easy one for anybody. They're not a pushover team.
What do you want to say about the Washington Wizards at this point, other than the fact that this isn't a very good team, right?
Yeah, yuck. Yeah, it's yuck. And look, I'll be the first one to admit, I thought this was going to work. I thought Brad Beal getting his contract was going to kind of put some of that to the side, and that him and John Wall could just focus on winning. I felt like the core that was coming back, Otto Porter would step up a little bit. He has. That Kelly Oubre would step up a little bit. He has. That I thought it was just all going to kind of start to click, and that Scotty Brooks would be the right coach for them. And it just seems like there are guys on the floor. There's no special. You mentioned earlier they don't have it. They don't have anything close to it.
John Wall's supposed to be it, though. I mean, and Bradley Beal's rumored to be, right?
Yeah, there's a couple of things that are kind of, you got to wonder at what point does John go, look, I'm tired of this. We've seen superstars do that. Carmelo Anthony, I'm not going to win here. Time to go. Dwight Howard in Orlando, time to go. At what point does John give up on the organization? I don't think he's wired that way. I think he'll run through the wall until he can't run anymore. But you got to get that guy some help. And I think that's the big thing, is that a lot of these pieces that are around John Wall don't fit. And, it's not a special group. And you got to wonder, is it time to maybe break that group up and go into the market and trade for some things? Because this team is not very competitive on either side of the ball, and they should be with the personnel and certainly the money they're spending.
Anything you're surprised about at this point? We're almost at the quarter pole here, Steve. Just something randomly that you want to throw into the conversation?
Well, I have a question for you, and I always ask this because I lived in the same world of hopping from arena to arena. When you do 5 games in 7 days, on the 7th day, did you know what day it was? I have such respect for NBA players that hop on a plane and hop off and can hoop at the level they can, given how the back-to-backs and all the travel works. You experienced it. I would imagine you maybe have a little more perspective now.
I did 30 ballparks in 30 days last summer, right? So this was not really like that. And, Niels was here for 10 days, and we were trying to shoehorn as much America, into this as we could. So we didn't just go to games. I mean, we went and found Pink's Hot Dogs in L.A. and climbed the Griffith Observatory and went out to the Golden Gate Bridge and, did the cable car, all on the same days where we're like at Steve Kerr's press conferences. So I was a little more tired after this one than I thought I would be, but I am getting older, and I marvel at the hockey players, man. When I look at the hockey schedule and the physicality of what they do, I can't imagine. Barry Trotz gave me a number. They played 9 games in 16 nights at one point. Now, think about that.
I've done it where I've done 7 and 10. That's kind of my longest road trip. I generally won't be away from the family that long. 7 games in 10 days. By the 10th day, I had no idea what day it was, and I just had to get myself to and from the arena. I didn't even do what you did. Look, I'd get a meal here and there, but I was sightseeing on top of it. So I have a lot of respect for players and how they do. But, back to your original question, some things that have been surprising. This Dallas Mavericks team, one, hitting as many injuries as they've hit, but also being as bad. Rick Carlisle teams generally aren't this bad, but, they're having to go to the very end of the bench to get, just guys to suit up, and you haven't seen Dirk Nowitzki yet. So, maybe that's not a huge surprise. I kind of expected maybe a little more out of Minnesota, Tom Thibodeau coming in and putting his fingerprints all over that team and kind of reshaping, but those young guys haven't been nearly as impressive as maybe I was hoping they were going to be. I certainly think as much as maybe Wolves fans were hoping. And then on the plus side, like I said, Atlanta being as good as they are, Chicago being as good. You think about it, you add Rajon Rondo and an over-the-hill Dwayne Wade, a Jimmy Butler who almost got traded, and a bunch of young guys, and Fred Hoiberg, and it didn't work last year. And they're good. They're a very good team. I don't think they're going to be in the hunt good, but they're a fun team to watch, and that's a bit surprising.
Steve Kyler does all things NBA for basketball insiders as well as One Up Sports. You can follow his journey out on Twitter at Steve Kyler NBA, and we hope you do that. Steve, take care of yourself. Have a great holiday. I'll continue to check in here. I wish I was checking in with Wizards Prosperity for the locals. There's not much to be said here beyond, okay, we'll keep an eye on it, right?
Yeah, well, just the trade market's going to open up here in a couple of weeks, so maybe there's an answer at the end of the tunnel.
Hope so. See you soon. He is Steve Kyler, NBA out on Twitter. I'm in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world, as well as our tech service in breaking news for you. Jimmy Smith, we'll see if he's going to play against the Fish on Sunday. Certainly hope so. Ravens are getting healthier here. The first place Ravens. I got to keep calling them the first place Ravens. It feels good to do that. Taking on the Fish this week. Lots of stuff up there in the Bayou Toyota Audio Vault as well. The breaking news happens first on the WNST Tech Service. That's brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Dennis Colossus will be here on Thursday driving you home as well. I am a very available individual via email. Nasty@WNST.net finds me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, as well as streaming live on Facebook Live, as well as on our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.